The shelter was unusually quiet that morning. Rows of kennels stretched down the long corridor, each holding a story of loss, hope, or despair. But in the farthest kennel, a small dog lay motionless, his eyes dull and defeated. His name was Buddy. Once a vibrant, tail-wagging bundle of joy, Buddy had lost his spark after a tragic accident left him paralyzed from the waist down. The shelter staff had done their best, but the odds were against him. The decision had been made, Buddy was to be put down. At the same time, 8-year-old Emily was bouncing in the back seat of her mom's car. Emily had always been drawn to animals, a passion ignited by her countless hours spent reading about them and watching documentaries. When she heard about the local shelter, she begged her mom to take her there to volunteer. Little did she know, this visit would change not just Buddy's life but hers as well. The moment Emily walked into the shelter, she felt a pull toward Buddy's kennel. While other dogs barked and wagged their tails, Buddy remained still. His big, sorrowful eyes locked with Emily's curious gaze. She dropped to her knees, pressing her small hands against the bars. "Why isn't he moving?" Emily asked the shelter worker. The worker hesitated, then sighed. "Buddy's paralyzed. We tried everything, but he doesn't have a chance. He's scheduled for euthanasia tomorrow." Emily's heart sank. Tomorrow? But he's still alive. He can't give up yet. Buddy lay in his small kennel at the far end of the shelter, staring blankly at the cracked ceiling. His once shiny golden coat had dulled, his ears drooped with exhaustion, and his legs, once quick to chase a bouncing ball, were now motionless. Weeks had passed since the accident, and the humans who passed by his kennel looked at him with pity before moving on to healthier dogs. Buddy had stopped hoping. The world, he believed, had no place left for a dog like him. The shelter was alive with activity that morning as families and volunteers came to meet the animals. But amidst the cheerful chaos, a quiet decision loomed over Buddy's fate. With resources stretched thin and adoption prospects low, the shelter had scheduled Buddy to be put down. His file sat on the desk in the office, paralyzed. Unadoptable. Euthanasia date, tomorrow. Miles away, an 8-year-old girl named Emily clutched a tattered stuffed dog to her chest as she looked out the window of her mom's car. Emily loved animals with all her heart. She had begged her mother to let her visit the shelter for weeks, insisting she just wanted to help. Her mom, Susan, finally relented, and they were now on their way. "Emily," her mom said gently, "you know we can't adopt a dog, right? This is just a volunteer." "I know, Mom," Emily replied, her voice full of determination. "I just want to help." When they arrived, Emily could hardly contain her excitement. The shelter's coordinator greeted them warmly, handing Emily a bucket of treats and showing her how to interact with the animals. Emily moved from kennel to kennel, her giggles filling the air as she handed treats to wagging tails and curious noses. But when she reached the last kennel, her smile faded. Inside, Buddy lay unmoving, his eyes meeting hers with a haunting sadness. Unlike the other dogs, he didn't bark or wag his tail. He simply stared. "Why isn't this one moving?" Emily asked, turning to the shelter worker. The woman hesitated before answering. "That's Buddy. He had an accident and can't use his back legs anymore. He's not likely to find a home." Emily frowned. "But he's still alive. Doesn't that mean he deserves a chance?" The worker sighed. "We've tried, sweetheart. But sometimes, the kindest thing we can do is let them go." Emily couldn't shake the sadness she felt after hearing about Buddy. As the day went on, she kept glancing back toward his kennel, her mind racing with questions. Why was everyone giving up on him? Couldn't someone help him? And why couldn't that someone be her? When it was time to leave, Emily begged her mom for just a little more time with Buddy. Her mother hesitated but eventually agreed. Emily knelt in front of the kennel, pressing her hands against the bars. "Hey, Buddy," she whispered. "I'm Emily. I wish I could take you home, but my mom says we can't. But maybe I can still help you somehow." Buddy's ears twitched slightly at her voice, the first sign of life he'd shown all day. Encouraged, Emily slipped a treat through the bars. Buddy sniffed it cautiously before taking it. "You're still here," she said softly. "And that means you haven't given up. So I won't give up on you either." That night, Emily couldn't stop thinking about Buddy. She lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the image of his sad eyes over and over again. Finally, she grabbed her laptop and started searching. "Helping paralyzed dogs," she typed into the search bar. Page after page of information appeared. She read about special wheelchairs for dogs, physical therapy, and success stories of pets who had been given a second chance. One article, in particular, caught her attention, a story about a dog who had regained mobility thanks to a simple, overlooked condition. Emily's eyes widened. "What if Buddy's the same?" she whispered to herself. The next morning, Emily was up before dawn. She showed the article to her mom, who smiled but looked hesitant. "Honey, I know you want to help, but Buddy's situation is very serious," Susan said gently. "But what if it's not as bad as they think? What if they missed something? Please, Mom. Can we go back?" Seeing the determination in her daughter's eyes, Susan relented. "Okay, we'll go. But don't get your hopes up too much, all right?" At the shelter, Emily practically ran to Buddy's kennel. He looked the same as the day before, still, quiet, resigned. But Emily wasn't deterred. "I read something last night," she told the shelter worker. "About dogs who look paralyzed but actually have something called IVDD. It's a disc problem, and sometimes they can get better with treatment. Has Buddy been checked for that?" The worker blinked in surprise. "Well, I'm not sure. We assumed it was permanent." "But," she trailed off, clearly thinking. "Can we find out?" Emily asked, her voice pleading. Moved by the little girl's determination, the worker agreed to have Buddy reevaluated. A vet appointment was scheduled for later that afternoon. The hours leading up to the appointment were agonizing for Emily. She sat by Buddy's kennel, talking to him, feeding him treats, and stroking his head through the bars. "You're going to be okay," she told him firmly. "I just know it." At the vet's office, Buddy was examined thoroughly. The vet ran tests, moved his legs gently, and finally took an X-ray. Emily and her mom waited anxiously in the small room, the seconds stretching into eternity. Finally, the vet returned, holding a clipboard. He looked at Emily, then at Buddy, and smiled. "Well," he said, "it looks like you were right, young lady. Buddy does have IVDD, and while his condition is serious, it's not hopeless. With the right treatment and some patience, he could regain mobility." Emily let out a whoop of joy, throwing her arms around Buddy. For the first time in weeks, Buddy's tail wagged weakly. The next few months were a whirlwind. Emily launched a fundraiser to help pay for Buddy's treatment, setting up a page online with his story and photos. Donations poured in, and soon Buddy had a custom wheelchair to help him move around. Emily visited Buddy every day, helping with his physical therapy exercises and cheering him on as he slowly began to regain strength. the bond between them grew stronger with each passing week. By the time Buddy took his first tentative steps without the wheelchair, he was almost unrecognizable. His coat shone again, his eyes sparkled with life, and his tail wagged constantly. The shelter staff was amazed by his transformation, and adoption offers began pouring in. But Emily knew in her heart that she couldn't let him go. "Mom," she said one evening, "I know we said we wouldn't adopt a dog, but Buddy's family is us. He belongs with us." Susan looked at her daughter, then at Buddy, who was curled up at Emily's feet. With a sigh and a smile, she nodded. The day Buddy came home was the happiest day of Emily's life. She had saved him, but in a way, he had saved her too, teaching her about resilience, hope, and the power of never giving up. Together, they became an inseparable team, spreading Buddy's story to inspire others. And every time Emily looked into his big brown eyes, she knew one thing for certain: miracles could happen, especially when you believed in them.